I'm Melissa Turner, 32, a graphic designer living in Madison, Wisconsin. That night, family dinner started like it always did, Mom passing the salad bowl, Dad slicing his steak with that gleaming silver knife, my younger sister texting under the table, the glow from her phone lighting up her baby face. The room felt warm, familiar. The clinking of cutlery, a rhythm I'd known my whole life. Then suddenly Mom set her wine glass down hard, the sharp sound slicing through the air. "Melissa," she said, her voice cold and steady. "This will be your last meal here. This house belongs to your sister now." I froze, my fork suspended midair. My sister looked up confused but said nothing. My father kept eating, eyes fixed on his plate. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the ticking clock. I didn't cry. I just chewed the last bite slowly, letting the quiet press against us like a weight. They expected me to plead, to explode, to storm off. They were wrong. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a white envelope, neat, heavy, and slid it across the table toward Mom. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling as she picked it up. I said nothing. When she opened it, her face drained of color. Inside were the bank statements, proof that they'd secretly used my name to mortgage the house. I stood, the scrape of my chair echoing through the room. "I'll move out," I said evenly. "But not because you told me to." I walked away, my heart pounding, not from heartbreak, but from the fire rising in my chest. They had betrayed me, used me, and thought I'd stay silent. They had no idea what was coming. Within 72 hours, I would make them regret every word, every lie. I wouldn't leave quietly, not ever again. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. What city are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I ask because I want to know that on the other side of this screen, someone out there feels what I felt at that dinner table. If that moment, the one where everything broke, hit you the way it hit me, hit like a punch to the throat, hit like truth, finally surfacing, then hit like drop a comment and stay with me till the end. Because this isn't just a story about one family dinner, it's the start of a rebirth. And trust me, you'll want to be here when I start taking back every... The next morning, I lay in bed in my house in Madison, the pale light slipping through the curtains I'd picked out myself, and my mother's words kept echoing in my head like a cut that wouldn't stop bleeding. 2 years earlier, I had drained every cent of my savings, $50,000, everything I'd scraped together through my 20s to save this house from foreclosure. Back then, red warning envelopes piled up on the kitchen counter, and every phone call made my parents flinch. They were drowning in debt, and I was 30, barely making ends meet as a freelance graphic designer, staying up until dawn to finish client projects. But I didn't hesitate. I withdrew it all, paid the bank, and kept the house. It wasn't just money, it was my future, my dream of one day owning a place of my own, gone in an instant to save the home that raised me, the home I believed still held love somewhere in its walls. The house had been falling apart then, peeling paint, warped floors, a dining room dark as a cave. I fixed it piece by piece. Weekends smelled of paint, thinner, my hands raw from sanding, but I kept going, believing I was rebuilding a family, not just a house. I painted the walls, a warm beige, hung green curtains so sunlight could finally spill in after years of gloom. I bought a soft armchair for the living room, one that hugged your body just right, the kind that made exhaustion melt away the moment you sat down. The printer in Dad's office, I bought that too, with the money from a last-minute logo job that nearly broke me. Every nail I hammered, every dollar I spent was for them, for us. I thought it meant something, that it would last. But my sister was different. She'd left 4 years ago, flying to Los Angeles to chase an acting dream that never came true. She called a few times a year, spinning stories about auditions and red carpets, promising visits that never happened. When she came back to Madison, she brought designer bags and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and my parents swallowed it whole. They bragged about her to the neighbors, she's about to make it big, and showed off headshots she'd taken in some Hollywood studio. I'd be standing in the kitchen with a rag in my hand, listening to them gush over her fantasies, while I was the one keeping the roof over their heads. My mother once looked at me and said, "She's going to be a star, Melissa." And me. On rainy days, I'd drag the trash cans to the curb soaked and shivering, and no one even noticed. I'd come home after 12-hour workdays, eyes burning from staring at design software, only to hear their laughter in the living room as if she were the only child they had. I'd sit in the armchair I bought, staring through the green curtains, wondering why everything I did never seemed to matter. 2 summers ago, I refinished the dining table, staining it a rich walnut to match the drapes. Dad nodded and said, "Looks good." Mom smiled, said feels cozy. A week later, they were talking about my sister again, about her new opportunity, her upcoming role, her name slipping from their lips like a prayer. I'd walk past the walls I painted the printer I bought and feel invisible. They leaned on me to keep this house standing, but their pride was reserved for her. I gave everything, my money, my time, my heart, and all I got in return was to be forgotten. I kept this home alive, but in their eyes, I was only the one standing behind the spotlight. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, the early light spilling through the window and glinting off the table where everything had fallen apart the night before. I picked up my phone, my hands trembling as I dialed Pamela Scott, my best friend and a lawyer who'd been by my side since college in Madison. Her voice came through crisp and steady the way it always did. "Pamela," I said quietly, "last night my mother told me to move out. She said the house belongs to my sister now." I showed them the bank statements. And the way she reacted, it didn't feel right. I told her everything, the cold envelope, the way my mother's hand froze midair, the silence that swallowed the entire dining room. Pamela didn't hesitate. "Check your credit report immediately, Melissa," she said firmly. "If something shady is going on, that's where you'll see it. And if you can get someone to dig into your accounts fast." Her words hit me like a siren going off in my head. I hung up, heart pounding, and scrolled through my contacts until I found Jeffrey Allen, a former coworker who owed me a big favor after I stayed up all night fixing a presentation that landed him his biggest client. "Jeffrey," I said when he picked up, my voice low but urgent, "I need your help. Can you log into my financial portal and check my accounts? I think something's being hidden from me." There was a pause. Then he replied, "Send me the details." My palms were slick with sweat as I typed out my login info. 20 long minutes passed, just the ticking clock and the sound of my own breathing in the kitchen. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Jeffrey. I opened it and the blood drained from my face. "Melissa," he wrote, "there's a personal loan, $50,000 under your name tied to the house. It's a second mortgage. But the signature, it's not yours." My stomach dropped. I opened the attached document, a scanned loan agreement from Madison Bank. My name was right there, my social security number matching perfectly, but the signature was wrong. The T in Turner was dragged sharp and straight like a blade. Mine always curved softly. I stared at the screen, frozen, my breath catching in my throat as the cold sting of betrayal spread through my chest. I called Pamela back immediately, my voice trembling but controlled. "They used my name," I said. "A $50,000 loan. I never signed anything." Her tone shifted, calm but deadly serious. "That's identity fraud, Melissa. We can build a case, but you'll need hard evidence, real documents, not just scans. Search the house, anywhere they might keep files." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, then set the phone down, anger rising with every beat of my heart. Last night they'd sat around that table looking at me like I didn't belong, while they'd already stolen my name, my future, and turned it into their lifeline. I thought of the years I'd spent holding this house together, the checks I wrote, the sleepless nights, the paint still faintly clinging to my hands, and now this very home had become proof of their betrayal. The kitchen felt smaller, not from fear, but from a sharp, focused rage that burned through me. I was no longer the daughter who believed sacrifice would be rewarded. I was a woman whose identity had been stolen, and I was going to take it all back. I tightened my grip on the keys, the metal cool and biting against my palm, and started toward the attic. That was where my father kept the old files in a wooden box beneath the flickering neon light. If the evidence existed, it would be there buried in dust, but not deep enough to hide from me. That afternoon, I climbed into the dusty old attic of the house, the air thick with mildew and the faint light cutting through wooden cracks like faded memories trying to breathe. Each step made the floorboards creak beneath my weight, a low groan that seemed to remind me this was where my father hid everything: bills, tax files, and the family secrets no one was ever supposed to touch. I knelt beside the old wooden chest under the flickering neon light, its paint chipped, and the rusted lock giving way with a soft click. I brushed away cobwebs as I lifted the lid, revealing stacks of papers, receipts, utility bills, tax reports, all coated in years of dust and silence. My hands trembled as I sifted through the files, eyes darting over every number and signature, desperate to prove that what I feared wasn't just paranoia. And then I saw it, a worn manila folder labeled Loan Docs, the sharp handwriting unmistakably my father's. My heart skipped. Inside was a copy of the loan agreement, the same $50,000 note tied to the house. My name sat at the top of the page, my social security number perfectly matched, but the signature wasn't mine. The T in Turner sliced straight and cruel, not the soft loop I'd signed 1,000 times on design proposals. I turned the page and froze. Tucked between the papers was a printed email folded neatly in half. The date was 6 months ago. The sender, Denise. The first line burned into me like a brand. Melissa's credit is clean. Just use her name. The bank won't question it. I'll handle the call. Below it was my mother's reply. Agreed. Do it. And then my father's hurry. Don't miss the deadline. My hands clenched so tightly the paper crumpled in my grip. The three of them, the people I'd protected, the ones I'd sacrificed for, had conspired to steal my name, my future, everything I worked for. I sank back against the chest, the dim light catching the dust as it floated like slow snow. For a long time, I couldn't move. The only sound was my heartbeat and the whisper of betrayal echoing through my head. They hadn't just betrayed me, they'd used me, turned my love into a weapon, and they were the ones holding the blade. Slowly, my breath steadied. The ache in my chest hardened into something else, cold, focused, unshakable. I wasn't shaking anymore. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and began taking pictures, each click sharp and deliberate, every shot a piece of truth reclaimed. I photographed the contract, the email, the signature. Then I sent them all to Pamela with a short message. Found proof. It's worse than I thought. Within a minute, she replied, That's enough. We can sue. Come to my office tonight. I sealed the documents in a plastic bag and looked around the attic one last time. The silence felt heavy, final. This wasn't home anymore, just a shell filled with memories that had rotted under the weight of lies. As I walked down the creaking stairs, the flickering neon light cast my shadow long across the dusty wall. And in that shadow, I saw it clearly. I wasn't the daughter trying to hold the family together anymore. I was the woman who was going to take back everything they'd stolen. Early that afternoon, I sat quietly in the living room, a small notebook open on my lap, listing every item I had bought for this house. Every piece, every dollar, every trace of the years I spent holding it together. I wrote gray velvet armchair. It was the very chair I was sitting in, the one that had carried me through countless late nights after long days at work. I remembered saving for months, scrolling through endless sales before I dared to buy it. Then came blue dining room curtains. I had chosen that color, so the morning light could spill in and make the space feel less damp, less heavy. Printer in Dad's office, I added that line too, remembering I'd paid for it with money from a last-minute design project that nearly broke me. Brass floor lamp, warm light, the one I found in a thrift store, polished back to life, and placed in the corner so the house would glow a little softer each night. Every object in this place carried my fingerprints, my sleepless nights, my quiet sacrifices, the silent proof of all the years I'd kept this family standing without a word of complaint. I picked up my phone and searched moving services in Madison. Dozens of results popped up. I chose the one with the best reviews, Madison Movers. "Hi, I need to move out today," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Can you make it before 4?" On the other end, a calm woman replied, "We'll be there at 3, Ms. Turner." I thanked her and hung up, feeling something in my chest loosen like an invisible rope had finally fallen away. I wasn't just leaving this place. I was reclaiming what was mine. While I was finishing the list, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and found Joyce King, my elderly neighbor, her silver hair tied neatly back, holding a plate of still warm cookies. "I heard the shouting last night," she said, setting the plate on the table. "Melissa, are you all right?" I nodded, though my throat tightened. "They kicked me out?" I said softly. "Said the house belongs to Denise now." Joyce's face hardened. "That's not right. I've seen you out there painting the fence, hauling furniture, fixing this place with your own hands. They don't deserve you." Her words stung, but not from pain, from truth. At least someone saw what my parents never did. I thanked her, and she gently squeezed my hand before leaving. The house fell silent again, the only sound the slow tick of the wall clock. I opened my laptop, attached every photo from the attic, the loan agreement, the bank records, the email that said, "Use her name," and typed, "This is everything. Let's begin." Less than a minute later, Pamela replied, "More than enough. I'll file the fraud suit tonight. Meet me at 7. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. My hands didn't shake this time. I looked around the room, the brass lamp, the blue curtains, the soft gray chair, each one, something I had chosen, something that held a piece of me. They could erase my name from the deed, but not from the life I built here. When the clock neared 3, I heard the rumble of a moving truck outside. I stood up and glanced around the room one last time. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. I smiled, small, certain. They thought they could throw me out like an unwelcome guest, but they were wrong. I was leaving, yes, but not empty-handed. I was taking myself back piece by piece, breath by breath, reclaiming every part of the life they tried to steal. By late afternoon, the rumble of the moving truck echoed through the driveway, heavy and steady, like the beating of my own heart. As I stepped onto the porch, Denise appeared in the doorway, her heels striking the wooden floor, a designer bag slipping off her shoulder. The living room was half empty now, the gray armchair loaded onto the truck, the brass lamp wrapped in bubble plastic, the wall, where the blue curtains once hung bare except for tiny nail holes that looked like old scars. Denise froze, her eyes darting across the room before her voice cut through the air like glass. "What the hell are you doing?" One of the movers paused mid-step, glancing over. I didn't move. The loan papers from the attic were in my hand, edges frayed but every word still sharp. "What am I doing?" I said, my tone calm but cold. "I'm taking back what's mine. Every single thing in this house was paid for by me. Unlike that $50,000 loan you all forged in my name." I lifted the page so she could see it, my name printed clear at the top. The fake signature below it smeared like a stain. Denise's face went pale, her lips trembling. "That's not true. You're making this up," she stammered, but her fingers around her phone were shaking. I stepped closer, meeting her eyes. "You sent the email to Mom and Dad. You wrote, 'Melissa's credit is clean, use her name, the bank won't question it.'" "I have the printout, Denise." Her eyes flickered, then dropped. "You're lying," she yelled, her voice breaking. Before I could respond, a deep voice came from the porch. "She's not lying." Ronald Gray, my neighbor, stood there, boots still dusted with dirt. I've seen Melissa here for years, painting walls, hauling furniture, fixing what's broken. What have you done, Denise? His words landed like a hammer. Denise took a step back. Ronald folded his arms, his steady gaze cutting through the room, standing between me and the lies we'd all lived under for too long. Denise turned, fumbling with her phone. "Mom, Dad, get home now," she shouted into it. "Melissa's taking all our stuff." I didn't flinch. My voice was steady, every word deliberate. "Tell them about the loan, too. Tell them I'm filing for fraud. You thought you could use me and throw me out. Think again." Her face stiffened. Her hand shook so hard the phone nearly slipped. She spun around, yanked open the door, and slammed it behind her so hard the frame rattled. Outside, the truck kept humming, the movers quietly finishing their work carrying the last few boxes away. Ronald was still there. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Melissa," he said softly. "They don't deserve you." I nodded, a calm strength spreading through me, not relief, but control. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one patching things, fixing their mistakes, swallowing my pain. I was the one deciding, acting, standing on ground that finally felt solid. The evening light streamed through the doorway, spilling across the empty floor in a golden path that seemed to lead me forward. I looked around the room one last time and whispered just loud enough for myself, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of taking my life back. That night, I drove to Pamela's apartment in downtown Madison. The warm yellow light spilled through the window, the faint smell of roasted coffee mixing with the soft hum of jazz. Her place was small, but full of quiet determination, shelves packed with binders and notebooks, as if every one of them held a battle she had already won. We sat at her desk, papers spread everywhere like pieces of a puzzle waiting to fit together. Pamela adjusted her glasses, opened a thick legal pad, and said calmly but firmly, "This is our chance. We're suing for identity theft and financial fraud." I nodded, my fingers already moving over the keyboard, each keystroke steady, alive like the beat of my own heart. For hours, we worked side by side, slotting every truth into place: the forged loan contract, the emails Denise sent to my parents, the bank statements, the fake signature that started it all. Every line I typed felt like reclaiming another piece of my dignity. By midnight, a 25-page file sat on the table, heavy and powerful, the weight of my own justice. The next morning, the air outside was freezing, my breath turning to mist as I stepped into the Madison courthouse. Its gray stone walls loomed above me, solemn and unyielding. Pamela handed the file to the clerk, a woman with a kind smile who stamped each page with a red seal and said softly, "You're all set, sweetheart. From here, it's yours." Holding that receipt felt like holding a piece of freedom itself. In the weeks that followed, I spent every waking hour gathering evidence. I dug through old bank records and found payments from 2 years ago, the same money I had poured into paying off the first mortgage on that house. Every dollar, every sleepless night, was now proof of the truth. One afternoon, Joyce, my sweet elderly neighbor, came to my new apartment and signed her witness statement. I saw her fix that house with her own hands, she wrote. Every wall, every piece of furniture, she bought it, she built it. They never appreciated her. Her words, notarized and sealed, made our case ironclad. A few weeks later, the court issued subpoenas for my family. I pictured them opening the envelope in the house I once kept spotless, my mother trembling, my father silent with rage, and Denise pacing by the dining table where I used to polish the wood grain until it gleamed. They'd argue, accuse, and scramble for excuses. But this time, they couldn't erase me. That evening, Pamela called, her voice calm but sure. "They'll try to settle," she said. "But if they don't, we're ready for court." I stood by the window looking out at Madison's lights flickering across the river like threads of gold, holding steady against the dark. And in that moment, I felt the weight I'd carried for years finally slip away. I was no longer the girl they had betrayed, no longer the one patching their damage in silence. I was standing tall, grounded, ready to face them in court, in truth, and in the mirror. This time, I wasn't just reclaiming my name. I was reclaiming every year they had stolen from me. Months later, I stood in a Madison courtroom where the morning light streamed through tall windows and fell across rows of polished wooden benches gleaming like mirrors. The air carried a mix of wood paper and cold air conditioning, making my heart beat slow and steady. The judge's gavel sat heavy on the desk like a promise that truth was coming. Pamela stood beside me in a charcoal suit pressed to perfection, her eyes bright with the calm confidence of someone who had prepared for every possible turn. Across from us, my family sat in a neat row, my mother Barbara gripping her hands so tight they'd gone white. My father Donald with his head bowed and jaw clenched in silence, and Denise, my sister, fidgeting with her silver ring, her eyes darting anywhere but at me. When Pamela began speaking, her voice was even and clear, each word sharp as a blade slicing through the lies they had built around themselves. She presented the forged loan contract, the emails Denise had sent to my parents, plotting to use my name, the mismatched bank records, and finally Joyce's sworn statement. The neighbor who had watched me fix that house with my own 2 hands, buy every piece of furniture and keep it standing when no one else cared. Each piece of evidence hit the table like a stone, building a wall of truth too solid to break. Their lawyer, a tired-looking man in a wrinkled suit, tried weakly to argue that I had agreed to lend them my name, that I had only been helping family. Pamela didn't need 5 minutes to corner him. If she agreed, she said coolly, "Show us the proof." One voluntary signature, one message, anything. Silence. Denise's hands trembled. My mother turned away. When Pamela finished, the room was still broken only by the sound of the judge flipping through the files. Then the judge nodded, her voice firm and final. There is no evidence of consent. The documentation clearly proves identity theft and financial fraud. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and just like that, the weight of years lifted from my shoulders. I had won. The $50,000 loan was voided, my name cleared from every record. For the first time in years, I took a deep breath, not to hold myself together, but to feel free. After the verdict, everything collapsed for them faster than I imagined. The bank reclaimed the house, they couldn't pay the debt. At the auction, I heard only a handful of people showed up, and when the hammer fell, the house I once poured my soul into belonged to someone else. Barbara, Donald, and Denise moved into a cramped apartment on the east side of town. Their furniture was stuffed into cardboard boxes, some of it left out on the curb. I was told my mother sold her old car. My father started waiting tables at a diner, and Denise, who once bragged about her stable life, was now working retail, drowning in bad credit. Their voices filled my voicemail, first pleading, then angry, then broken. I listened once, then deleted every message. I blocked their numbers. Each block was a clean cut, severing one more tie to the past that had kept me captive for so long. They couldn't touch me anymore. Couldn't pull me back into their chaos. My new life began in a small, bright studio downtown, a design space filled with light coffee and the rhythmic tapping of keys. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where every chair, every lamp, every print was mine, bought, placed, and earned by me. At night, as soft light spread across the room, I drew again, colors flowing with peace and hope. No one controlled me. No one demanded. I was no longer the daughter carrying everyone's mistakes. I was Melissa, building a life that was entirely my own. Looking back, I see the truth: loss isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's the beginning of who you're meant to become. They thought they could use me, take my name, my trust, my love, and leave me with nothing. But betrayal doesn't have to break you. It can forge you. I learned to stand up, to fight for what's mine, to walk away from those unworthy of my loyalty. To anyone listening, my story isn't just about a lawsuit or a lost house. It's about reclaiming your worth and refusing to let anyone else define you. I lost a family, but I found myself, and that's a victory no one can ever steal. If you've ever been hurt by the people you trusted most, remember this: you can rise, and you don't need anyone's permission to be happy. Tell me, does my story remind you of something in your own life? Share it in the comments. I read every word. And if you felt even a little strength, a little connection in what you heard, tap, like, hit subscribe, and thank you for staying with me until the end.